Alright, so we need a few things to do this experiment. The first is a large mass that you can put on top of the string that's holding the pendulum. This is so that the string remains suspended off the table. You also need a table with a sharp edge so that the string doesn't move as the pendulum's oscillating. You need the string itself, so I've used my shoelaces because I couldn't find string, but you can use string, yarn, dental floss, anything you can find at your house. You also need a smartphone. That's very important. It's the most important aspect of this experiment. A smartphone. I have 2 weights here that I'm going to use to weigh down my pendulum for my subsequent experiments. And I also have a laptop running Microsoft Excel, but you can also use OpenOffice Calc, anything else to get your data analyzed. Alright, so what I've done here is that I've suspended this giant box that I made for my wife against the table, and I've stuck a thumbtack there holding the shoelace in place. The reason I did this is that when I was swinging my pendulum before, what I was finding was that this shoelace kept moving. But with the thumbtack in place, it is stationary, and the only thing that's moving is the part below the thumbtack. Alright, so if you don't have a thumbtack, you can use tape, use whatever you can, just secure this part to the table so that this whole thing does not move as your pendulum is moving. Alright, so I've got my smartphone running sensor log, and at this point all we need to do is just take this, suspend it, and then just let it go. So you'll notice for the first few trials it'll jiggle a little. The smartphone actually will move, but then eventually it'll stabilize into nice, smooth, periodic motion. Okay, so you should be acquiring data throughout the entire experiment. So as soon as you let it go, you should start it before you let it go so that it captures the entire process. And then when you look at the actual data, you'll see that it has nice periodic motion. And at the very end, you'll see it hiccup a little bit. So you'll need about 10 full cycles of the pendulum. And if you have that, you've got good data. So once again, to remind you, you can stop acquiring the data, hit the folder button, and then send this entire file by email to your computer. All right. So I've got my computer right here. I sent the file, and what I'm going to do now is open up the file. It's a CSV file, and if you open it up in Excel, it should just open. And then I have some columns here. So I've got the timestamp in real life. I've got the number of data points and then the record time. So I also have acceleration X, Y, and Z. So you'll only need one of these. And what I'm going to show you how to do now is plot the time against the acceleration. So I'm going to select the two columns. Then I'm going to go to Insert, and then I'm going to go into Chart, and then the one you want to choose is going to show up soon. You want a line graph with, oh sorry, not line graph, you want a scatter graph with lines. Okay, so you'll see this. So this won't actually mean very much to you at the moment. You're going to have to do a little bit of processing to figure out what this means. So remember, at the very end we saw a little spike as we pick up the pendulum. That's that spike right there. So what you can do is you can change the y-axis. So first you click on the ribbon, you click Format, and Chart Layout, and then Axis, Vertical Axis, Axis Options. And then here you can set the maximum and the minimum. So we're going to set the minimum to be, we're going to leave the minimum to be 1.2, but negative 1.2, but we're going to set the maximum to be 0.8. And you'll see what happens when I do that. So when I set the maximum to be 0.8, you'll notice that it's going to, see what I did there? Instead of setting it to minus 0.8, I set it to plus 0.8. So go back into Axis Options. And then you just need to set this to minus 0.8. And then here you see that this should adjust. Okay, So the next thing you can do is adjust the x-axis. So you'll notice that my pendulum, this is all periodic motion as it's going, and you can see that my pendulum is decreasing. It's a damped pendulum. So we're not going to really worry about that. We're going to pick the first 10 or so points where it's stable. So what I'm going to do is adjust the x-axis again to cut off all the data points after the first 10 seconds. So I'm going to click on axis, horizontal axis, and then axis options. And then I'm going to set my maximum to be about 15. Oops. 15. All right, so you can see that's still a lot. So I'm going to adjust it again to 8. But this time I'm also going to crop out some of the beginning because that was the point before we started moving the pendulum. So I'll go 3, and then I'll go 3 to 8. And now I should be able to see a nice periodic motion in my acceleration. All right, so go ahead and graph the other 2 accelerations as well, y and z, and see if you get periodic motion as well. You shouldn't, and the data set to use is actually the x acceleration in my case. But it all depends on how you have oriented your smartphone. So I've oriented my smartphone in this way as it's hanging off the pendulum. The other thing I wanted to show you was how to add weights to your pendulum. So I've got a little string here that I can attach a couple of weights to. So I've got this guy here, and I went onto the Apple website to figure out exactly how much this thing weighs. So I know exactly how much this weighs, and I can just slip it into this little knot that I've made here. Okay, and the other thing I've got is a lock. So I also know how much this weighs. I can attach the lock to my smartphone, to the string that I've created here, and then swing them both together. The reason you need this is that you either need to vary the angle of your pendulum, or you need to attach some weights to control different variables. So I can do this here, and then once my weight is attached, you want to make sure that your weight is as close to your device as possible. I need to make a few adjustments to make sure that this is actually pretty close, and then you can just swing these 2 together. So that's pretty much it. That's how you set up your experiment. You need to set up either the angle, you control the angle at which you drop this at, or you need to attach a few different weights to your apparatus. You can always move this up if you find that your weights are hanging too low. And then the other thing you can do is use a kitchen scale to measure various items around your house. If you don't know the weights of specific things, you can measure them using a kitchen scale. Or just estimate them, and that's it. So good luck. This is pretty much all you need to set up your experiment. You should be able to get really good data now, kind of like this, and then you should be able to answer the rest of the lab experiments. Okay, good luck.